Hello and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast on the internet that has the science and the screaming to determine what is the single greatest movie of any given year. My name is Ryan, and I am continuing this journey of mine to do what everybody asked for and try to determine what is the single greatest horror movie of 1985. Tonight, and for one night only, we are going to be discussing Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. With me, as always, on this journey is the one, the only, Tompkins.
Tompkins, go Tompkins. Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's so cool. Go Tompkins. Yeah. Oh, thanks, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, what's up? It's me, Tompkins.
I told you last show you're not allowed to bring your mother to the studio.
She does not listen. So
Okay. Tompkins, you said that after last week that if you don't, this is a competition show, of course. Tompkins will be duking it out with somebody to see who can talk about Friday the different one, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, the best. You said after last week's loss that if you lose again, you will walk off stage and never return.
yes.
So, buddy, I did you a favor. Tonight, competing against you is Taylor is back.
What's up, guys? What did I miss?
Yeah, go Taylor. Wow, my God.
Oh, wow. Hey. So, apparently what I missed is the audience turning around their opinions of me.
Full 180.
Yeah, I think I've won one episode of Movie of the Year ever. Is that right?
Do you remember what it was?
No.
More importantly, who are you competing against?
It would have been
I'm
me,
competing
right?
against myself. I'm my own worst enemy.
Yeah, I'm assuming you beat me. So, but let's keep in mind that 85 horror fans don't know about Greg. He is the host of the other show. And if it was me against Taylor, there's no way I'm beating Taylor. If you've ever heard Greg talk about Taylor, if you've ever heard Greg talk for 5 minutes, it will all be about Taylor and his love for him.
Okay, you say that, but Greg has hosted many of the episodes, and I have never won.
That's a good point. Well, that's why I brought you here.
Yeah, so that you can prove that you're the better friend.
Because Tompkins needs the layup. Or Taylor will win, and we'll never see Tompkins again. Gentlemen, I have to ask you. It's my job to ask you. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. Overall, what did we think of Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge? Is that a tough question?
Yeah. Well, this one's hard because we watched a documentary. And, when we talked last week, we talked about this, and it's, famous for one particular aspect. And outside of that, it is a little bit hard to come up with stuff to talk about. And I kind of wish I'd had the chance to go into the movie not knowing any of that and then had it dropped on me. Because the whole time you're watching it, you've got that lens on already. So it's so hard to extract it and just be like, okay, what's Freddy doing in this? How is this just working as a horror movie?
Where's Freddy at? What is he doing right now? The documentary that Tompkins referenced, all three of us did watch as well. It's called Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street.
Scream, Queen.
Scream, Queen. And it is about, it's a documentary sort of about and made by, in a sense, the star of the movie, Mark Patton, and basically what happened to his life after the movie came out. We're going to get into what all of that stuff is right now. Taylor, had you seen this movie before this week, and did you know what it was famous for besides being a Freddy movie?
I had not seen it. I knew what it was famous for. I have seen several of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and I knew already everyone said 2 is the gay one.
Uh-huh.
I was just about to say, should we all on 3 say what we think it's famous for and make sure we are on the same?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I spoiled it, if that's a spoiler for you. 2 is the gay one. That was the only thing that I knew about this one. But I hadn't seen it before. And I was like, yeah, I get it. That makes sense.
Reputation earned. But do you sort of agree with Tompkins' assessment that it's sort of it's the interesting part about it? It's sort of all it really has going for it?
Yeah, I mean, unless which I think we might get into later, talking about it. It's most interesting with that aspect or in relation to the rest of the franchise, but like as a standalone, it's sort of it's got that one thing going for it, and then it's kind of flat for the rest of it. It's kind of weird. It's a very famous movie, but not for the same reason that other horror movies from this era are famous, if that makes sense.
It does a lot of stuff that just doesn't feel like it makes sense. Like, I would not have been surprised at all if this had been one of those cases where they're like, oh crap, we need a sequel, get whatever, script.
Just find a screenplay off the top of the pile, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they
change his name
did.
To Freddy. Well,
I'm pretty sure.
I wasn't, because in the documentary, the screenwriter at least talked about it as if he was like, I didn't just want to write, the sequel. I wanted to do something different. That's how I took what he said. But it's also possible that he just wanted to do a non-standard horror movie from the start, and then they're like, how about you make that scary guy Freddy?
Yeah, I think it was a little column A, a little column B, because like the first Nightmare was like a huge success, and it was, if I remember correctly, it was like their first movie for New Line, basically. Yeah. And it was like, they were like, fuck, all right, if we need to keep going as a company, we need to make more of these. So I think they like probably brought him in, and I assume like he had ideas for like another thing, and they were like, we'll just like turn it into a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And I think he just sort of mishmashed like what he already had with like the other half of a script that fit what they needed.
Yeah, the
like,
company
right, go.
The company had been around for like 15 years before Elm Street 1, but throughout the 80s, like New Line was it was like its nickname was the house that Freddy built. And basically it was their financial pipeline, and it's not unlike independent studios, of this ilk, and genre studios, and then also it's not unlike horror franchises. It's just like, next one. We just got that one out. Let's get the next one going.
They are about to forget the name Freddy Krueger. We need another one out there.
Because it's literally like a year in between the first one and this one, right? Like
the release dates are almost exactly 1 year apart. That's crazy. And I think that between watching the movie, and because it is odd, it does feel like a bunch of puzzle pieces that might not be from the same puzzle, and then the documentary, and then reading about it this week, like it was sort of this all hands on deck in the worst way possible. Like the documentary, it remains unclear to me exactly what the screenwriter had in mind, because he changes his opinion depending on who he's talking to. But the screenwriter was changing the movie to allegedly be more gay as they were shooting. The head of New Line was on the set every day, scared shitless that his company was going to fail, and Wes Craven was gone. Like the granddaddy of the franchise is not there, so everyone is just stumbling around trying to put this thing together, and that's what it feels like. It feels like a mishmash.
Which I don't want to talk about it. I want to save some of this for like the actual thing, but it sort of makes sense that is an environment that let the, like comparing this to Fright Night, where there's a lot of homoerotic / homophobic content, but it's in your more traditional 80s subdued style, where on this, like the thing in the documentary that they keep saying is like the subtext is just text. I think that those like weird rushed a camel is a horse by committee kind of conditions are what gave rise to that. I think
like, could you imagine making the second Avatar movie a year after the first Avatar movie? Of course not.
You have to give 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
I could do it if they just asked me to recut the footage from the first one in a different way.
The reason that Tompkins said he was going to save some of this for later is because this is a scored show. Tompkins and Taylor are going at each other, and Tompkins wants those points. So, in order to get those to Tompkins, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to dive directly into, I'm just going to say Nightmare 2, or Elm Street 2. The title's too fucking long to say every time. Bye. Just 1 year after Wes Craven kicked off the would-be franchise, New Line Cinema released A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. This was also a hit, but word of mouth quickly spread that it was a turd, and it eventually became known as the worst of the series. But that was before the gays got a hold of it. The movie tells the story of Jesse, played by a young Mark Patton, whose family moves on to the legendary Elm Street. And wouldn't you know it, before long, Freddy Krueger isn't just torturing Jesse, but almost becoming him. Over the years, the movie became an important part of queer horror. As the homoerotic subtext can be so thick in this movie, it is sometimes hard to just not call it text. Last year, a documentary about Mark Patton's life post-Nightmare called Scream, Queen was released. It mostly focused on Patton's claim that the movie typecast him as a gay man and ruined his career. Taste buds, I ask you this. Let's move past just calling something queer, but actually try to figure out what it's saying about queerness. Does this movie, and we talked about this with Fright Night too, does this movie come off more as a homosexual movie or like a homoerotic movie or a homophobic movie?
I think it is kind of like one thing that I was asking myself as I was watching this is if homophobic things are just inherently also homoerotic, which sort of makes sense because a lot of homophobia, I think, does stem from, one's own sort of unexamined curiosity and things like that. And in a very, especially American movie way, you can read it either way, especially because if you are going to make something queer in a repressive society, you have to pretend to be condemning it. And that's the excuse to show it. And that happens not just with queerness, that happens with lots of different things, especially in American movies where we're like traditionally obsessed with self-censorship.
Or just be a little more subtle, right? You don't have to condemn it if you bury it a little bit more. And then you can get away with basically whatever you want. But this movie said, no burying for me, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's where this movie runs into problems is with the perception of it, where like from almost like the beginning of horror movies, like they've sort of been like slipping in like queer subtext because they're inherently like outsider movies. But this one is like just fully like, here's a gay movie at like right at like near the height of the AIDS crisis, which is like, ooh. So like that's when people like there's no like wall that they can put up to pretend like they don't see it. So it's like, this is a gay movie and I have to have an opinion about that.
Yeah. I'm very glad that we did watch that documentary because I'm like almost nervous about how I would have talked with this otherwise, because watching in the documentary people talk about it and be like, oh my God, he's so obviously gay and like all of this stuff, and being sort of like casually flippant about it. It was like kind of bothersome. Like once you see like everything that was going on, when you're reminded of the actual historical context and the guy's own personal life and stuff like that. And I think we do have a tendency even today to sort of talk about things, especially as, let's face it, straight dudes, and a sort of like Tobias Funke in Arrested Development way, where it's like, we take a weird delight in poking fun at things that feel sort of like closeted or whatever, without taking time to examine, like, I don't know why someone would still be in the closet or why these things would go. So I don't know. And I don't know how much that like actually relates to the text of the movie, except just, the whole thing where like really what makes this unusual is that a lot of the sort of homoeroticism that you would see typically in like an 80s movie, like this is the decade of like Top Gun, like it's there.
Right.
Yeah. It's just not hidden as well.
Yeah, and I will give the movie credit for this. Like, I think that you could, like, there's a lot to argue of why, like, this, like how gay people like own this movie now, and it's, it's everything that they wanted a horror movie to be that they never thought they could get in 1985. I had to look up the year that this came out, even though we've been talking about 85 for so long. And then there's also a lot of stuff where you can say, like, I'm a homophobe and I love this movie because it fucking hates gays as much as I do. But you do have to give the movie credit that there at no point is there like limp-wristed, lispy, stereotypical point at and laugh gay characters. Like it never takes that route.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very like rather than here's a stereotype of like a gay person, here's just like someone who is a little like quiet and like sensitive,
an outsider.
And I think it's a good point that I don't remember if it was in the documentary that they brought this up or if I was just reading something, but like it is a very important point to point out that like he is in this movie like a man playing the like quote unquote final girl role that's traditionally filled by a woman.
And I mean, it was in Nightmare 1, and then it was in Nightmare 3 through however many there were. Like, they were like, whoops, it's supposed to be a girl. Like, just a girl. Yeah. And we're never going to do that again.
It's also interesting because, like, the thing you hear a lot now is, like, can't we have gay characters who just are gay? They're not, you know, a stereotype of a gay person, and the entire point of their character isn't that they're, like, a gay person constantly pointing to their own gayness. And you kind of, for the most part, actually get that in this movie because the main character just has, like, mannerisms that signal queerness. But it's not as repressed or hidden as you would normally see. And it's also not pointed to because apparently the director had no fucking clue what he was doing.
Yeah.
So it is just like one of the few instances you get of a character who is gay existing as they are.
Yeah, it's so weird because like there's at the same time there's like Jesse who is like a pretty just like I'm existing like as like a gay character and like my like potential gayness isn't like involved in the movie. But then there's also like the one scene where they go to what is obviously supposed to be like a queer bar and have like his coach like in a full leather harness and like represented as some
he's
sort
in
of
a
like,
leather vest. Let's
you're right, it's not a harness. I'm sorry,
he's not wearing like a
it wasn't quite that bad, but it is sort of like it seems like it's trying to hint that like the coach is like some sort of like beyond sexual deviant, which that's where I think the movie veers into like potential homophobia. It's most explicit.
Yeah, and it's more explicit than that because they do mention before that Sam's friend
Grady,
yeah, says Ron Grady. He explicitly mentions like that guy goes to S&M clubs and gets his rocks, like all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
it's a weird.
Let's talk about the coach's death too. Like so they go back and so he sees him at the bar and like it seems sort of like a gay bar and then the coach steps up with his not harness, his leather vest, and then we're like, oh fuck, this is okay. So this is a little stereotypical, and then now we're back at the school, and the coach gets dragged into the shower naked and just gets his towel whipped or his butt whipped with a towel.
First, he has him run laps, and then he tells him to hit the shower, and then you get what feels like a very erotically charged scene of him just in the shower. And while the coach goes and gets some jump ropes out in a way that feels like
bondagey.
That
feels bondagey.
Yeah, where it's like, I am going to use these. And then instead he is pulled away by the jump ropes, tied up into the shower naked, whipped very hard in the butt with a towel, and then Freddy slashes his back, and then he expires, and then it turns out that Jesse is Freddy. So it's very that's the most like absolute. It drops two pretenses. There's no more subtext whatsoever, and you can't pretend it's not like homophobic at that point anymore.
Slashes his back in the exact same way that your back would be slashed if you're in a movie and you just had good sex, right? Like,
yes,
it's the nails in the exact same way.
Yeah,
it is like I think that is like a weird like nexus point of the movie where like on the one hand it's like removing a lot of subtext on whether or not this is a queer movie, but also like engaging in what should be like the better subtext of like Freddy is like this thing that's inside of him that he's like wrestling with and like worried that like he's like some sort of like deviant demon monster, where like I think an actual like queer writer or someone like with a more empathetic tone trying to write that movie might have wrestled with that and like somehow done like a Babadook acceptance like style thing, or like thing. But I don't think that fits into a Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
I mean, like, it's really hard for me to not see this movie after like watching the movie, watching the documentary and everything, as basically Freddy can just be whatever is scariest to you, and what is scariest to this person. Or even, like, the documentary actually cleared some of this up for me, but if I had not watched it, it seems like what the scariest thing to this person is gay people coming to the suburbs and unleashing their monster all over our children and our families in our already perfect way of life. But it's so accepted in the gay community. Do you guys think that, like, if you see something that's sort of like if it could represent you, or you just think it's fun and awesome and you like to talk about, is it okay just to ignore all the stuff that could be terrible about it? Just like, fuck that. I don't even like think about that part. That part's the horror part. I'm just focusing on the gay positivity of the movie.
Yeah, I think that any group of people that has struggled to be represented in mainstream Hollywood has examples like this, of sort of like the early or first example of like, that is definitely the thing I am, in a way that like you cannot deny. And it receives like, you know, it's not just like a quick glimpse or whatever. They receive significant screen time, that kind of thing. You know, there's like all sorts of, you know, like there's been lots of written on how like, you know, like a lot of the characters Sidney Poitier played were like problematic in various ways. But, you know, until you get a character who is both the thing you are and not so problematic, that's all you have. And then you have like fond memories of that, and your community like takes possession of it. And like, I think that like, if you're part of a repressed community, I give you permission to cherish.
I think it's like sort of a Rorschach like test based on like who you are. Like, I think watching this movie, you could be like, this is homophobic, or like if you are a queer person, you're like, this is me, and I find stuff that I enjoy and I can ignore. It's sort of like the sleepaway camp discourse, where like it's like one of the first instances of like or like not one of the first, but like a major instance of like a trans character. Like the first one, entirely almost definitely problematic. Sleepaway Camp 2, just an openly trans character who like happens to be the murderer, but like it has nothing to do with her like trans identity or anything. So it's like, if you want to like respond to that and accept it, which I know like a lot of people do, great. And then some people are like, this is a horrific, you know, like thing that they've put into the world and should be ended. Who am I to say?
Does the trans character in Sleepaway Camp 2 though have a frozen fucking face and that wolf laugh the entire movie though?
I wish. Would have been a better movie, but no, unfortunately, it's just very, very chipper.
I want to like so just to get back to the idea of like, what is this? You know, like the original question: what is this movie saying about queerness specifically? It is, you know, like important to contextualize as happening during the AIDS crisis, and when, if you were, you know, like Sam talked about a lot of this stuff, you know, like the idea of sleeping with a man felt especially dangerous, like you might be killing them, like you might be killing yourself or whatever. And so like that sort of fits neatly with the idea of Freddy wanting to possess him, seemingly towards all the people that he might have erotic interest in. But also, I think something that sort of complicates that is the fact that, so if you're going by the idea of, so whenever Freddy starts to take him over, that's him in danger of expressing his homosexuality. There's also the scene where it happens when he's about to have sex with Lisa, and there's also the scene where he winds up in his sister's bedroom. And so I think also what's going on is that there's a more standard, you know, like average Joe becoming the villain plot line that you see in slashers, where it's like, what it's tapping into is like a masculine fear that you might be just borderline dangerous to everyone near you, in a very violent way. And then I think that the screenwriter, who is not a good screenwriter, was just pulling shit from the zeitgeist, and that those two things got kind of bound up in each other.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I also think that like this movie came out at like the exact worst possible time for everyone involved, where like I think it was being made before like AIDS had like the name AIDS and was like a thing. Like it was happening, but it wasn't getting a lot of coverage. And then right around the time it came out was when like the media frenzy sparked. So I think like both this movie and like Mark Patton were like victims of AIDS essentially for like the residual backlash homophobia that occurred.
Yeah,
where,
I think that like I have a lot of issues with the documentary because it's basically like everyone is a shithead. Like everyone kind of sucks, and I think that's because it's true. I think that all those people actually do suck, but I think that the most important part of it was getting a reminder of like a time, like before we either were around or remember, where it's almost like in the 70s, getting close to the 80s, it seemed like we were on the path to it was okay to be gay, and then AIDS hit, and it was just a bunch of back steps, just like, no, you know what, fuck that. And there's people in the documentary being like they're gonna kill us all. I'm glad that they're getting AIDS, and I hope they only give it to themselves so they die, but instead they're probably going to give it to us because we're sharing a water fountain. And I like it seems like, oh fuck, we were almost there, and then everybody these people, I don't know, like these very conservative people that will go onto a camera and say like, oh, don't hide my face, don't clear my voice. I want everyone to know I'm saying this. They look for these platforms. They're like, AIDS, sweet. Now I can go shit talk gay people and fucking hate them like I really do.
Now I have a
AIDS
pretext.
on its own, like set things back like an entire generation. Partly because it wiped out an entire generation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like Mark Patton, like he said, like I was getting like a ton of offers to play like very important gay. Like I think he had an offer to be like the first like lead queer character on a network television show, which like would have been huge, but he was like, I had to turn it down because like at that time I couldn't be out anymore, and like everyone just like retreated in, and I think that's largely because of like the exact time when it happened.
Yeah,
I think that story is a good example of like what the time was like, but I also don't fucking believe anything that guy says. Like,
well, yeah, take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, like I think that story is indicative of the time, if not completely truthful from that person. Guys, we have got to cut out, but I assure you that throughout the rest of this podcast episode, we're going to be going back to just sort of the queerness of the movie. It's really what makes it stand out. It's why it's important. So I'm sure we're going to get back to it. But before we do that, let's do a little Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore!
Welcome back, folks. It is, of course, Mount Rushmore. The real Mount Rushmore is dedicated to presidents, our top 4 presidents that we love because of how iconic they are. We don't want to do presidents. What we are going to do tonight is build a Mount Rushmore to the 4 most iconic movie gym teachers and coaches of all time. Before we get into it, though, Taylor, I'm going to go to you. What do you just need to be or do if you're going to be a great movie gym coach?
I think you have to at some point be chewing on something. That's like a number 1 for me. Has to be in there. Whether that's like you've just got like a toothpick in there, or you're on like the big league chew, you gotta be snacking down with them chompers.
I think for a lot of them too, if you were like, open your mouth, what's in there? It's like, oh, nothing. That's how my mouth works now.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that's how it does. Tompkins, what do you need from your movie gym coach? And is it the same as what you need from your real life high school gym teacher?
I was homeschooled. But for movies, you need them shorty shorts. And you also need to seem really mean at first, and then you either stay mean the whole time or are secretly nice.
One of those two things. I will say another crazy thing about this trope, I guess, this character is, I think a lot of the most iconic, or just in general, you get one scene. You know, most movies, if you, like some of the most famous ones, you get one scene in that movie, and you better fucking make it work. All right, let's get to it. Taylor, you are the challenger tonight, even though, let me remind you, Tompkins did lose last week. Who is your slam dunk gotta be on the mountain?
I'm gonna say, and this is a little bit fudging the requirements here.
Right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate, because I think this guy deserves it, or at least in my heart. I'm gonna choose from the movie Rookie of the Year, Marv from the Wet Bandits, who I think is his official actor name. Who is the coach for the 13-year-old who has a superhuman pitching arm.
But also plays for the Chicago Cubs.
He plays for the Chicago Cubs, and his coach tells him, he's like, listen, I've got it. Some people, they want to heat up an arm. Some people, they want to cool it down. I'll tell you what it is. Hot ice.
And
Never
you've forgotten that advice.
I have never forgotten that advice, so I pour hot ice onto my arm every time I go to pitch a big game for the Chicago Cubs.
That's a maybe. His name is Daniel Stern, by the way.
Daniel Stern. I never remember that.
He was also in City Slickers.
He's also in City Slickers, and
I haven't seen City Slickers since I was 5.
City Slickers is great. It's a fun movie.
I mean, it's no City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold, but
Yes.
whatever. He's also old Kevin Arnold.
Curly's Gold is his pubes, right?
Yes. His gold pubes. Tompkins, the mountain is wide open.
Yep.
Taylor sort of blew it. Where are you going to go?
This one I think really needs no introduction except just to say his name. Herman Boone from Remember the Titans.
Is that Denzel Washington?
That is.
Do you have a Denzel laugh?
No, I can't.
Okay.
There was a pause, like I thought he was preparing to do like a really good one.
Just like get in the zone.
Yeah.
You could have done something there, Tompkins. You could have yes-anded somehow. If you would just read Bossy Pants, I would really appreciate it. This, I think, is super important. I think this is a iconic Denzel movie, and I think it's because it's the TNT TBS syndrome of these movies sneak up on us, and everyone has seen them a million times, even though like the box office wasn't that great, and it's because these movies are just on 3 times a day for our entire lives.
Yeah.
What's his name again, Tompkins?
Herman Boone.
He's on.
Yeah.
Taylor.
Yes. All right. I'm gonna throw someone out who's very near and dear to my heart, and who I think is America's
the last
father.
One was dear and dear to your heart.
All of these are going to be near and dear to my heart. Spoiler alert. It's Coach Gordon Bombay from the Mighty Fucking Ducks.
Yeah. I'm a notorious Mighty Duck hater. I've never seen them, and every time they're brought up on any of these podcasts, I just start screaming and ranting, but I don't think I can do it this time, right? Like, this is just, it's finally brought up in an appropriate way, and I think he just has to go on the mountain.
Yeah.
What a
the
fucking
guy.
name for a tiny little white guy, Gordon Bombay.
Yeah. That's such that sounds like a name that I would make up and put on Twitter.
All right.
Bombay sounds like Herman Boone Travoltified.
Tompkins, where are we going?
All right, I'm gonna go with another pretty obvious one. This one has like a slight, so I'll get to it. Gary Gaines from Friday Night Lights, as played by one Billy Bob Thornton. But my thinking here is that maybe if you walk up to the statue and just peel away on the face of Billy Bob Thornton on this mountain, beneath it you will see Coach Eric Taylor from Friday Night Lights, the show.
Or maybe it's one of those things where when you're walking towards it, it's clearly Billy Bob, but if you walk past it and then look at it, it's like, oh, the face is changing. It's like some haunted mansion shit. It sucks so much that we only talk about movies on this show because that means no Coach Taylor. And then Tompkins found a fucking way.
Tompkins.
Coach Taylor from the show is going on the mountain. All right, we've only got one spot left. Taylor, Coach Taylor, where are we going?
Okay, I'm gonna try and decide here. I'm gonna go with Rick Moranis from Little Giants.
Oof. Any good? Rick Moranis reference is good, right?
That is not high school. That is Pee Wee football.
Shh! You shut your fucking mouth! I swear to God! I will slit your throat.
All right, we're now in speed round. Tompkins, what do you got?
I knew someone would say it, and I feel so good for shitting all over your day.
Tompkins,
so powerful. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Rita Desjardins from Carrie. We talked about you either stay mean or you reveal yourself to be secretly nice. She realizes that Carrie is having her monthly visitor for the first time, and that the kids are really not giving her a fair shake. And she shows Carrie that just little moment of kindness and adult fellowship that she needs so badly. And I think that's a very iconic archetype and a very iconic role.
I can't remember her face. So Taylor, what do you got?
In some cultures, a coach is called a sensei, and that's why Mr. Miyagi, I think, should be listed as a high school coach.
No way,
100%. Dude, Ralph Macchio is in high school.
He's in high school.
He's getting coached in karate. It's absolutely Mr. Miyagi.
He is not a high school. Can I pitch my last one against that?
Yeah, but Taylor gets a point if you do.
Like, what do you mean? Like, no matter what?
If you pitch this last one, I'll let you do it, but Taylor gets a point.
Okay, I guess you don't want to know.
So I do have to reveal the one that would have gotten you 5 points if either one of you said it. It's a new game I just created that we're going to do every week. It's Sparky Pilastri from Bring It On. Ian Roberts from Upright Citizens Brigade would have gotten you 5 points. But here is your Mount Rushmore of high school coaches. Herman Boone from Remember the Titans. Gordon Bombay from the Mighty Ducks. Coach Taylor, Bob Thornton, and Mr. Miyagi. Congratulations to all 4 of them. When we come back, let's get back into Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Now, Nightmare on Elm Street, like a lot of movies from this time, helped to create the fact, as we talked about before, that we have to sequel the shit out of everything. That is still like a plague on our society today. Is this satisfying as a sequel, first of all? And second of all, does it matter? I was able to watch the first one before we recorded tonight, and it's not only is it better in every fucking possible way, except for like being a little gay, but also... like we talked about before, like this sort of just feels like it comes out of nowhere. Was Freddy just added? Is this satisfying if you have seen Nightmare 1? And do horror sequels owe anything to the original, product?
I think horror movies owe less to the original product than most other genres, maybe any other genre, just because we've been conditioned to accept, this is just going to go off the rails in, whatever way it does. But I do feel like one of the things that is more strict is that the villain needs to have some consistency. And so I think it is not to this movie's credit that Freddy drastically changes his nature in several different ways. First of all, the need to possess someone to kill in the real world.
Which we already have. We have hundreds of movie monsters that already do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Why did we need, Freddy does this cool original thing. Change it back to that fucking bullshit thing that everybody else does.
Yeah, and there's not even a pretext given to explain that. And also the weird burning up birds and hot dogs in the waking world and all that stuff that has nothing to do with the first movie and is never explained, or they don't do anything interesting with it either. So those were not particularly satisfying elements. And
Taylor, do you need it explained?
What?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need it explained? I mean, it's a fucking horror movie, right? It's a $2 million horror movie. Do you need this shit explained?
No, absolutely not. But I also I think this is more of like a I think specifically for fans of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, I understand why people hate this one. Like I think as a standalone movie, fine, whatever. But like as a follow up to Nightmare on Elm Street, like if like fucking Dream Warriors is your favorite in the franchise, you fucking hate this movie. Like you want it burned and like obliterated from the face of the earth. So like I think there's like an element of like this movie fucked up in doing all of the, like Tompkins said, it did all the worst things you can do as a sequel. It like destroyed the rules of the antagonist, which is like slasher movies live and die by like the rules of their guy.
I mean, is this like with horror movies? It's sort of a situation where, unlike any other genre, please do the same thing, right? We sort of like that's why we're here. Is we want you to do the same thing. The other famous one is. Have you guys ever seen or heard of Halloween 3?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Season of the Witch.
Season of the Witch, which is just we need to make another Halloween, but no Michael Myers. Get that shit out of here. He was slowing the franchise down. Let's just do something else.
The fun thing about the Halloween franchise is that like it originally was supposed to be like every movie was just an anthology and like they had no relation to each other. But Michael Myers was so good that they're like, all right, well, let's do a sequel with Michael Myers, and then for the third. And then for the third one, we'll do something unrelated, and that one fucking sucked.
Yeah.
Well, restart your idea. Like, do an anthology thing and just have Season of the Witch be the first one. They were like, oh, but we'll never come up with a fucking brilliant specific name like Halloween. So we got to keep that
like, if
title.
we do that, Season of the Witch will just be a smashing success that people want more and more of.
We gotta
that would
have
be terrible.
We gotta have Celtic wizards casting spells with bugs.
I do think like the trouble with trying to make a sequel in general is that there's like a paradox at the heart of it where people want more of the same but different. If you change everything around and try to surprise them and make it fresh and new, their reaction will be, why did you do this? I went to this because I liked the first one. But if you just do everything that's in the first one, they'll be like, all you did was do the first one. And so I think that things like the basic rules around Freddy Krueger and how he operates are important, because playing around within those is how you can make something that is both the same and different. I also disagree that it doesn't matter whether or not things like the fire are motivated. I think that we think that about horror movies because our expectations tend to be low, but I've always hated when people say, like, you know, when I'm like, oh, that didn't really make sense about like something in a Pixar movie, and someone would be like, well, it's a movie for kids or something like
oh yeah, that drives me crazy.
There still needs to be rules and like the basic rules of storytelling should apply to any given movie and should be held against you if they're not. And I understand that it's more
in a court of law.
Yes.
Yeah. I understand if, like, you know, in like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, like, yeah, if you like did the first one and you're like, we defeated Freddy, we're good, and then you're like, fuck, we need to make another one. Fine, he's back from the dead, whatever. Like, that will like give you, but like within the movie, you need to like be internally consistent with the world you've created, even if it's not the same world that we, the viewer, inhabit.
Or even like you would think that like having compelling characters is something that is a necessity for storytelling, and we've just decided horror movies that rule does not apply to them, and I'm totally fine with that. It's not why we're there, in a lot of the same ways why we're not watching porn for compelling characters. But
especially in slashers.
Yeah, exactly, and it's because they're just fodder, you know, like they're just cannon fodder, and I don't want to get to know somebody before I watch them die. I just want to fucking watch them die. But yeah, to get rid of this premise, and it's on record that the director hated the first one, and so he was just like, oh, let me make that second one then. But it's not just the getting away from horror, like being a nightmare, like being in people's dreams, like the first one was, and instead possessing people. That I think the worst part of the movie is there's a backyard high school party.
Yes.
And Freddy just walks fucking out, and he's like, kids, get out of here. And now we're just seeing this guy as like a human, a not very tall human with all these kids, and now the movie is completely deflated as far as a horror movie goes.
I think Wes Craven said he like famously hated this movie as well, where he was like, yeah, you fucked up every good thing that I did. Like, and he specifically pointed to that like a pool scene where he's like, Robert Englund's not a tall dude. Like when you surround him with a bunch of like teenagers who are really all like 25 to 30, like they're full grown adults. It's not as scary anymore.
And it's the Jaws thing, too, of, like, we don't have a high budget, so we're going to make Freddy look as scary as we can, but then cover him in dark and shadows. Don't just have him walk out next to tiki torches and be like, what's up, fuckers?
Yeah.
And he's basically putting on, like, a Hawaiian shirt, and he's like, whoa, here I am! And, like, just, like, he's doing, like Joker flourishes when he, like, kills everyone. It's like, this isn't scary anymore.
I did like the hang loose sign with the blades, though, with the fingernails.
Yeah,
that's a good
keeper. But you can obscure the rest of him and get some hang loose finger blades. I think that like Alien is the thing it really mastered in the genre of horror is that even things that look scary, which let me tell you that Alien does, are scarier when you cannot see them. If you watch the first Alien, you barely see the alien at all. It's all about like catching quick flashes of it, anticipating its presence, things like that. And so
a blip on a radar.
Yeah, and this movie you get like a weird mutation of that where you really don't see Freddy that often. He's kind of like absent from the film. Like it feels like there's like up to like maybe 15-minute stretches where you don't see him. But then when you do, it's just like full on close up portrait mode. Just like, here's Freddy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you brought up Alien, because I think Alien as a franchise is also like the template almost for like doing a good sequel that is, like you talked about, like the same but different. Like Aliens is a much different movie from Alien, but they're both like very good at what they do. This is like a very different movie from the first Nightmare on Elm Street, but not successfully doing the things that are different and also abandoning the things that worked in the first one.
I wonder that like the documentary makes it clear that everybody hated this movie, and like there's like snippets from the internet of people saying very not nice things about how gay the movie is. And watching the documentary, you think that people hated it just because that it had all of this gayness in it, but I don't know. Watching the movie, like, I wonder if it was just way more hated because of the betrayal of the first one than it was a guy does a gay little dance.
Well, it's in the same way we talked about, like having this pretext or whatever. I think it kind of occupies that same space where it's like it's just a bad movie and a bad sequel, and there's gay stuff in it. So it's just like going to be such an obvious focal point of people's hatred if they are homophobic.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to be like, oh my God, that gay, did you see how gay it was or whatever, especially in the fucking 80s, than it is to say like, yeah, I don't know, like it was interesting. The premise of like, it just seems like this is a different monster altogether.
Yeah. I do say like, yeah, it had both issues. But, like, I do think, like, the kills in this one are less imaginative. Like, there's no one getting, like, we don't have Johnny Depp getting eaten by a bed in this movie.
Holy shit, motherfucker. I just remembered the going into the bed part when I watched it today. I forgot about the fucking volcano that comes after it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's
the first
so
one's
much
amazing.
Blood.
It's, I think
not
a big
one
knock
Johnny Depp's worth of blood.
No.
More than that, for sure.
I think a big knock against this movie is that, like, the director, like, has, I think, mentioned in behind-the-scenes interviews and, like, in the documentary we watched, he was like, yeah, I was really worried because I didn't know how the fuck to do any of the special effects stuff.
Yeah.
To do. And I think that shows, like, sometimes it's like when the shot where Freddy is coming out of Jesse in the shower, like, coming out of his stomach, the moment where it cuts back and it's so very obviously a Jesse puppet, was like I laughed out loud, which is not what clearly not what they're
that's never
intending.
good. Yeah, I mean,
this movie, I think this movie does consider itself above trauma. You know, like it thinks that it is more important than some low budget quickie movie, even though it's literally a low budget quickie movie. And it's because I think that this director wanted people to think that he was better than he is, and now can finally admit it. And like the director too, like he's like, I didn't know that it was gay, and I can't believe people think that.
Yeah.
Dude, if people didn't think that, then no one would remember your movie fucking existed. You should get down on your knees and praise whoever that this movie has gay shit. Otherwise,
so you have a
it would
reason to be alive still.
Yeah, so like, there's a reason who people care about you.
I didn't look it up. Did this director ever direct anything else that was like noteworthy in any way?
He made a movie called The Hidden.
Oh,
do you guys remember that?
I've heard of that movie at least.
I haven't heard it. I don't know anything about it.
And then he directed 6 different behind-the-scenes documentaries about desperate housewives.
Cool.
Hell
Dope.
yeah.
We love that.
I think that's more up his alley for sure. And
That's what we're doing next week.
And he didn't even realize they were housewives.
Just desperate single people?
Yeah. I totally missed that. I think that this is a great example of the kind of thing. Like, I remember talking to someone once about Star Wars and who hated Star Wars and was, like, dickish about it. And he was like, I don't understand why people don't like the new ones. Like, they have, like, the ships and stuff, right? Like, isn't that what you want from those movies? And it's just the way that you talk something that you do not understand and are of disdainful of without bothering to understand it. It feels like that's kind of the way this guy is about horror, because it's like stuff like where it's like, well, I made the bird like catch on fire and like the hot dogs and stuff. Like, isn't that what you want? Like, you like this stuff, don't you?
Isn't that fucking what you demand? Tennis strings popping as hard as they can. And yeah, like you could see him directing that bird scene, being like, "Man, Hitchcock is looking down on me, saying, fuck yeah, bro. You're a true director."
As we were watching that scene, the person I was watching with looked at the screen and went, "Oh, Hitchcock, the birds."
Yeah.
Because it so directly rips off like the effects and everything.
Yeah.
But better though, right? Like I think this guy is Hitchcock plus.
Better than Hitchcock.
For sure.
Rope my ass.
Birdemic shock and terror territory.
Fuck, there's something that I love so much about the first movie in a franchise having a subtitle. Like, there was no... Just call it Birdemic, and then maybe use shock and terror for the second one. Nope. It's so weird. Master and Commander, Far Side of the World. Like,
yeah.
You guys got cocky, and karma bit you in the ass. All right, we do have to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to do Nightmare on Elm Street 2 trivia, where Taylor and Tompkins are going to earn all of their points.
Trivia.
That's right, you heard the robot, because the robot says trivia, and then it's time for trivia. Tompkins, in this season so far, would you say that doing well in trivia makes or breaks your victory? Or do you think you can overcome a poor showing in trivia?
It does not matter for me.
It does not matter to you?
Nothing to Tompkins.
No. Trivia does not matter?
No, the points I get from trivia will make no difference.
In your life?
Do good, do bad, doesn't matter.
This is a whole new Tompkins that I've seen, and I can only assume that you are possessed by Freddy Krueger. All right, gentlemen, the rules are easy. Please wait until I finish the question and then buzz in by saying your name. Get it right, get a point. Get it wrong, nothing happens. Here we go. Trivia number 1. During the PE scene, the boys are playing baseball. What are the girls doing a few feet away?
Taylor.
Tompkins.
Taylor.
They are shooting bows and arrows.
What the fuck, guys?
What the fuck's going on there? You can't do those two things on the same field.
This is like a common trope. Like, there's so many high school movies that just have... It's typically girls shooting bows and arrows during high school time.
Yeah. Well, that's why they gave it to Cheryl on Riverdale.
Oh, yeah. She's a fucking master bow and arrow person.
For no reason.
So
I'm a feminist, so I think it's good.
Good. That's about movies. Name a TV show about an archer.
Tompkins.
Taylor?
What the
Arrow.
fuck?
No. Not Arrow. Tompkins?
Green Arrow.
No.
Taylor? Archer.
It's Archer, yeah. It's about multiple archers. In the scene where Jesse and Freddy first come face to face, Freddy caresses Jesse's cheek. What was Robert Englund's suggestion in that scene?
Tompkins.
Tompkins.
That he put the finger blade in his mouth.
Right into the mouth, which
Yes.
it seems like Robert Englund was fully on board. That not just that this movie was gay, but let's make it gayer, right?
Yeah, Robert Englund seemed to be the only person who knew what was going on while they were filming it.
And loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does Wesley Snipes tell you he wants a blowjob?
Taylor.
Taylor?
He puts a blade in your mouth.
Yeah, he says put the blade in your mouth. I'm going to give that to you. The infamous dance scene in Elm Street 2 is a nod to what movie?
Taylor.
Tompkins.
Taylor.
Risky Business?
It is Risky Business. What seminal teen drama on Fox had an entire episode that was a nod to Risky Business?
Taylor.
Taylor.
Was it the OC?
It was the OC.
You son of a bitch. I hate that you made me do it.
What is the total minutes for Freddy's screen time?
Tompkins.
Tompkins.
I'm going to say 10.
Higher. Taylor.
11.
Higher. Tompkins. This is exciting.
21.
Lower. Taylor.
16.
It's 13. Number 8. The noise from what animal was added to the music every time Freddy was on screen?
Tompkins.
Tompkins.
It was like whale sounds or something.
It was a whale, yeah. That's how you make shit scary, guys. Whales. What animal noise do I hear when I'm looking at you two?
Tompkins.
Tompkins.
Like a hyena laugh.
Okay, it's part hyena laugh, and what else?
That noise a camel makes when it like farts with its mouth.
That's correct. You guys both got that. Robert Ressler was driven to the audition for this movie by which of his Weird Science co-stars?
Tompkins.
Tompkins.
Robert Downey Jr.?
It was Robert Downey Jr. This was probably not the time in history to get in a car with Robert Downey Jr. Christian Slater, John Stamos, Brad Pitt. Which of these three actors auditioned to be Jesse?
Taylor.
Tompkins.
All of the above.
All of them is correct. What scene in this movie? What scene in this movie has Freddy Krueger played by a woman?
Tompkins.
Tompkins.
Fuck, I don't know. He's only the bus. Is it the bus driver?
No, that was a boy. Taylor.
When he's getting like lit on fire.
No, it's when he is like you can see inside of Jesse's mouth. There's an eye, and they built the puppet Jesse too small, and so they had to put a smaller girl head in there. What is the most regrettable scene to the people who made this movie to this day?
Tompkins.
Taylor.
Tompkins.
The dance scene?
Incorrect. Taylor?
Fuck, I was going to say the dance scene. I'm going to say the dance scene.
Still incorrect.
Fuck.
It's the parakeet. If country superstar Mr. Urban and rock and roll drummer Mr. Moon started a band, what would it be called?
Tompkins.
Tompkins. You got to have an
Urban.
answer before you say your name.
Urban Moon.
Incorrect.
Taylor.
Taylor.
Parakeets.
Parakeets is correct.
You son of a bitch. I hate you.
What do you call two piles of jizz on the floor?
Tompkins.
Tompkins.
Paraskeets.
Paraski is correct. And finally, what would you call it if two vaginas farted at each other?
Tompkins.
Tompkins.
Paraqueefs.
Incorrect. Taylor?
What?
A pair of vaginas.
Incorrect. What would you call it if two vaginas farted at each other? I would call it Taylor and Tompkins. Great job, guys.
Fuck.
When we come back, we're going to dive back into Freddy 2, Nightmare on Elm Street 1, Part 3. back to Nightmare on Elm Street 2. This movie is less of a slasher film, like we sort of talk about, than other nightmares, which means there's less of sort of like a victim after victim feel to it. There's less of like a, I don't know, line them up and let's see all the different ways to kill them. But that doesn't mean it's not without its like horror set pieces. Do any of them work, guys?
No.
I'm trying to think of any that like really work.
An entire set piece that like, you know, the cumulative effect is a positive one, I would say no.
Yeah, I think
there's set pieces that have elements that are kind of cool or interesting or thoughtful, and then 1 second later you're like, oh, but that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That was stupid.
It's
yeah.
This movie's so weird to me because I feel like all the moments that aren't set pieces, I'm like, yeah, this is a fine movie. I'm okay with this. And then the instant there's any sort of like element that should be the draw of the movie, I'm like, this sucks. Get this out of here. Throw this in the garbage.
Let's go over a couple. Let's start with the death of the gym teacher. Was this is like where it all like, you know, it all comes to a head and we see exactly what everybody's been talking about with this movie. But as a horror set piece, was it effective to see sports equipment go fucking off? Like they've always wanted to. They've always just wanted to like go crazy and then murder a gym teacher.
I feel like I feel like the balls flying out was almost good. But like they lingered on it too long to where the point like they made me confront the idea of like, well, it wouldn't hurt that much if like a tennis ball hit you. Like I don't care.
And that needs to be like the horror amuse-bouche. You know, you can get like one little nip of that before you move on to something better. But all it has to follow it up with is like, and now the tennis rackets are doing something a little weird.
Yeah, I thought
it was just the strings breaking though. Like it wasn't dangerous. It wasn't loud. It was just bink, bink, bink.
I thought that the idea of the jump ropes being like moving, like dragging, like bondage things were like cool, but then it led to just a bunch of ass slapping with towels, which seemed juvenile and silly in a way that just made me laugh more than anything.
And like it's like I was talking about before, it's confusing as to like what the screenwriter intended as far as the queerness of this movie. But I think it's very clear that he did not have a good relationship with his high school gym coach and took a lot of shit out on this screenplay.
Yeah. I think you could rewrite this scene. Like there are elements within it that could become interesting in the hands of a skilled auteur. Like the idea of this coach is about to, it looks like, you know, assault this kid, and then instead having the tables turned and in this sort of like S&M way. I think that someone good could do something interesting with that, but someone good was not behind the camera on this one. And
we're not going to argue this, right? Like that's just a matter of fact. And the director's a schlub.
It's weird because the director is adamantly like, I had no clue any of that stuff. He claims that when they went to the gay bar, he didn't know it was a gay bar. He's just like totally. And I guess it's like the 80s, so maybe that is how it was. But it's just wild because like really this scene is just too busy being horny to be scary.
It's also, too, going back to the whole thing of, is this movie homophobic? Is Freddy Krueger just gay people taking over the suburbs or whatever? This is like, I think he's the most clearly obvious gay character. And between the time we find out that he's gay and the time that he dies, he's clearly going to fucking rape a high school student.
Yeah.
That's a real bummer to confront as like a concept.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the parakeet. Did we cover that one? Is there anything else that we have to do there?
No, next.
Grady and Jesse in the same room, and then Freddy coming out of. We talked about how it's so very poorly done and cheap and cheesy, but like, was there flashes of like, that's kind of ingenious. That's okay.
Yeah, I think that could have been, again, like, I think all bad movies have a good movie somewhere inside them, and you can catch little glimpses of like what subconsciously the people who are making it were picking up on. They just weren't good enough to like be like, oh, that's what I'm doing here, and like develop it. And so like this idea of, this monster comes out inside, like the fear of one's own sexuality or whatever. Like, I think that there could have been something interesting there as well. But it's like this weird, the writer claims like, oh, it was all subtext before, but it really wasn't. He's a shitty writer too. And it's all like, the friend being like, "Oh, you want to sleep with me?
Yeah.
Not a girl? What's up with that? You've got a girl who wants to be inside you. Why are you here?"
Yeah, it's like so odd. Like it's like the screenwriter walked up to a teenage boy and was like, "Hey, here's all the jokes that I want to make. You just say them word for word without me having to like do writing."
I don't want to do writing. Doing writing is so hard. I don't want to do that. And it's weird, too, because the writer, every time that he says, like, there was a little bit of gay subtext here. For every time he says that, he has also said, this is the straightest movie of all time, and it's Mark Patton's gayness that makes it gay. And you're watching something like Freddy Krueger come out, and you're thinking at the same time, this is gay, but it's accidental, and it looks like shit. And again, it's not Freddy's powers. He doesn't possess. He takes over dreams.
It's not a thing that he does.
God damn it. All right. We haven't talked about the final thing at all, where the movie is sort of handed over to Lisa, the girl across the street, and she's the one who runs the giant maze through there's always some sort of like giant factory you have to go to at the end. Yeah. And then she goes and teaches Freddy Krueger and Jesse how to love. And wins the day. Was there anything good here?
No.
No, other than the fact that we got a little more time with Lisa, who looks exactly like Meryl Streep.
Yeah, it's hard to deny her.
Yeah,
Lisa and her friend were both easy on the eyes, you could say.
Yeah, I enjoyed her being sort of the focus for a bit. It was fun in a way that I'm not sure the movie intended, to watch her run around the factory and occasionally like just kind of flap her arms because she like ran out of runway, but like they couldn't end the shot soon enough.
Also, what the fuck was up with the dogs with like the doll faces?
All right, let's get to it. This is the most important thing. So
really bad.
Lisa gets to the final level, and there's two guard dogs there, but the guards have sort of human faces that sort of reminded me of the end of Sleepaway Camp, just frozen, laughing faces.
They've got fucked up baby faces. They've got
there's nothing about like them in this movie that would predict them, or that's not part of Freddy's shit. It felt like, oh, hey, this movie where these dogs make sense is done using these props. Should we just throw them in our movie? And they were horrible. It was the scariest part of the movie by far.
What it felt like is that someone was like, "Hey, my daughter tears the faces off of all her dolls because she recently underwent trauma. So I just have like a bunch of doll faces lying around." And then someone else was like, "Well, I've got a bunch of untrained dogs. Do you think we could just?"
Do you think we could be best friends forever?
I think there's an opportunity for both of us here.
Yeah.
It's like peanut butter and chocolate. It worked out completely.
I've got two dogs who are camera shy the way most dogs are gun shy. Maybe if we like completely obscure their vision and then like super glue them to the floor, we could get something scary that way.
I've just adopted two dogs who are into real fucked up kabuki theater. What do you got for them?
Yeah.
And the agent was like, "I've got the perfect thing. Hold on. Let me get on the phone with my good friend, Jack Shoulder."
There is a good like camera trick or whatever where she's running and the thing drops out beneath her and she's just hanging from the thing, and then they do like a match cut or something and show that she's actually just collapsed on the, like, just on a technical level.
Good.
That looked good, but I don't care, and I don't care about what it means.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen those internet videos of there's like a bridge you can cross? And it's like screens.
Yes.
And so while you're walking on it, the screens look like cracked glass and they're about to break. And just watch people's legs turn to jelly.
Ooh, fuck that. Yeah, I think the most successful that this movie gets with playing with the stuff is like having people like see fucked up shit that is then revealed to just be like their psychic stuff. But like I think that was like them taking the best parts of the first movie and then fucking with the rules of it in a way that made it not make sense anymore. He's like, well, they're not dreaming in the day.
I mean, one of the craziest parts of the movie is he falls asleep in class, and then a snake comes to eat him, and then he wakes up, and there's just a snake on him. That's the actual snake from the classroom.
There was an actual snake. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, the
scene
teacher
too.
is just mad that he is playing with the snake.
And very mad.
Yes.
And like when he gets in trouble, all the other kids are laughing, and then he like looks at him and he gives them a look. He's like, "You guys,"
and the middle finger.
If you put a fucking snake on me while I'm asleep, I'm gonna like change schools. Fuck you guys. You're not my friends. We're not sitting together at lunch. That's not cool.
But he becomes good friends with Rod because that's another weird like. It's also it goes back to like the homophobia / homoerotic stuff where it's like. It's a mixture of like clearly that was either consciously or subconsciously intent. Also, it's just really bad writing because they're trying to do the like, oh, we're enemies, but now we're friends thing. But the way that happens in writing is there's a scene where they're mean to each other, and then there's a scene where they're nice to each other, and you're just supposed to pick up on.
And then,
they're best friends now.
Yeah,
and then we see the power dynamic perfectly switch in another incredible scene where Grady refuses to chew or swallow. He just fills his mouth with like 2 burgers and screams dialogue. And then Jesse finally steps up and he's like, "Can you get the fuck out of here, dude?" And he stands up and he leaves. And then I don't know what he said.
Yeah. Grady's like, "Fine, me and my 3 milk cartons are gonna get out of here."
There was a little bit of Evil Ed energy in Grady of just like, what the fuck, man?
Also, the ending. The very, very ending scene, she confronts Freddy Krueger with love and kisses him on his mouth and
his non-chapstick lips.
So he bursts into his signature flames. That's always been a thing Freddy Krueger has been all about, is he makes stuff catch on fire, but now he's on fire. And then Jesse climbs out of like the charred body, and that sucks on like 2 levels in a way that are very that are very intertwined because it's antithetical to a slasher movie to do like the whole like it's the final confrontation, but it's like but it's love that wins the day. That's not what people go to a fucking slasher for. Come on, don't do that. And that is also the moment. So it's like most betraying what people go to slasher movies for in a very boring way. And it's, to me, the moment that is most definitively homophobic.
This is when if you like are proud of this movie as a gay person, like you have to ignore this part because he defeats homosexuality.
Yeah. It's like a gay conversion movie.
Right, it's a pray the gay the way movie where there's like you just need the love of a good Christian woman, and all these urges will go away.
Preferably, who looks like Meryl Streep. Like that's going to be your best bet.
Yeah,
and if someone could do it, it would be someone who looks like Meryl Streep. But it cannot be done.
Speed round.
All right, guys, here we go. Last chance for points. There's like 3 more chances for points. I got to stop saying that. Speed round number 1, and Taylor, you don't have to say your name. You just say Tompkins' name or just bust in.
Right, cool.
Would you buy and or eat a cereal called Fu Manchus?
Taylor. Yes,
Taylor?
I would.
Taylor, that's racist. I'm giving Tompkins a point for that.
No.
Weird little thing there where we have a incredibly racist version of Fu Manchu on the cover of a cereal, as if he's like does he also have a Saturday morning cartoon in this universe?
Yeah. Chewy is not a quality I want in cereal.
So great name for a candy.
Yeah.
But maybe
it's a great
not
name for a Wookiee.
I like that in this universe they have just like the racist version of like the Boo Berry and Count Chocula universe.
Yeah. And if we were recording this podcast 10 years ago, we would come up with 10 other cereals from this movie. Today, we will skip it.
Are you sure? Because we have answered all of the other speed round questions. So, one of the final ways to get points, Taylor, what other cereals are in this movie? Give me one.
I don't. Patty Oat Malleys.
Okay, that's racist against Irish people. I will not have that. Tompkins gets the point. When we come back, let's hand out some awards.
The original nightmare coming out in the night air. Fall asleep and I'm right there in your mind's eye. If you die there, then you're mine, boy. I don't fight there. You think I'm terrified of nightmare? 27 years, you'll be asleep. Me, I'll be creeping up in your dream. That's a long time. I am relentless. At best, you're an apprentice. Taking your appendix, give you tetanus and a setbacks, and I help you. Are you reckless? And death is infectious. Punch you when you're precious. Neck time, and you.
That's right. You heard the sound. It's awards time. Once again, the 1985, or I guess the 1986 Oscars, gave this movie 0 awards. I do think that, Tompkins, we have only dealt with non-nominated films so far in this season.
Horror doesn't get its due.
It really never does. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it its very own awards. We're going to start with what is called the Bondage Award. Tompkins, do you want to explain this, please?
Yeah, I can. It's kind of right in the title, but obviously this means the teenaged character played by an actor who is closest to being Bond-aged. So more suitable to play James Bond than a teenager. But again, it's.
It's right there in the title. Sometimes I think that the audience is stupider than they are. How old do we think James Bond is?
James Bond is 45.
45. I was going to say
Bullshit.
38.
I think canonically, in my canon, James Bond is forever exactly 32.
That's too young, dude. No, he has to be more weathered than that. Wait.
No, I think they get actors. They do the same thing to James Bond that they do to high school kids. They get an older actor to play a younger James Bond.
Tompkins,
that's my theory.
I think James Bond is 70.
That's pretty good. Tompkins, who do you think should get this Bondage Award?
If we are limiting it to named characters, then I would say
I am
Robert
not limiting it
Ressler.
to that.
Okay. If it was named characters, I would say Robert Ressler as Ron Grady because he has Widow's Peaks.
I agree.
Multiple?
If it's just, yes, several. His widows are a peekin'. If it is unnamed characters in the lunch scene where Ron Grady has his mouth so full of food, right after Jesse grabs his tray, there is an extra who has to be a high school student because they're in line at the high school cafeteria, and who his shirt is open by like 3 buttons, and he just has like a full Italian chest of hair.
Is there a medallion somewhere in there?
Yes, buried deep within the.
Well, now I have to go. Now I have to go rewatch the movie, but for right now, I'm just
I
gonna say
screen
Grady.
capped it. So if we need to prove that this is in fact the oldest person who has ever been in a high school, whether on film or not, I can. But boy, is this an old high school student.
I mean, I got to say that I wear, shirts that go up to my tippy neck because I have no chest hair. If I had a lot of it, it would never be covered up.
If I had a lot of it and I was 14, you bet.
Taylor, I think
Yeah.
Grady is the person to beat. Who do you got?
Well, I also had picked Grady, but I actually looked it up. And do you guys know how old Grady, like the actor who played Grady, was when this movie actually came out?
I do not. Is this trivia?
This is trivia.
Ryan.
Ryan.
I do not know.
Tompkins.
He was Tompkins.
23.
Younger. He was 20 years old. when this
Wow.
movie-
Shit. A lot of
He
testosterone.
He basically was a high schooler, but he looked way older than everyone else in the cast.
Did you guys
Yeah.
see that they're making a sitcom about Dwayne Johnson's middle school and high school years, where he's famously 42 when he was in 8th grade? If you've seen the pictures, and now there's going to be a sitcom about him just fucking milfs all day long.
What?
Tompkins gets the point. The next one
Yeah.
is body horror, guys. What's the one? Because I think that with this, everybody has a different part of the body that squirms and screams them out. Taylor, what do you have?
Well, if it depends on like what you're talking about, part of the body, because if we're counting just it has a semblance of humanness to it, the dogs with the baby faces is absolutely the worst. But if that's disqualified,
No, it's fine.
Okay, cool. Then that's it.
Baby face is typically just a compliment, right? Like, oh, you have a baby face. Unless you're a fucking dog, and it's the worst thing I've ever seen.
I also think babies are horrific to me.
But like Taylor, you have a baby face.
I fucking hate looking at myself in the mirror.
And you're a dog.
And you're a dog, so you're disgusting. Tompkins, where are we going?
When the Freddy Krueger finger blades come out of Jesse's fingers.
100% Tompkins.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that was if dogs with baby faces was disqualified, that would be my next one.
Fuck,
Yeah.
man. I just didn't think that this movie had it in it to make me like fucking gag a little bit. God damn
I
it.
don't do finger stuff.
Yeah.
No fingers.
Just
though,
thinking
guys.
of like the times, like when you accidentally, poke something even a little bit under your fingernail. Ugh.
Oh fuck! Oh,
I have this thing where like I'll be laying in bed next to my wife and she'll be asleep, and I'll think about her foot accidentally like grazing the back of my leg and her big toenail just pulling back somehow because she and like now I'm awake for the rest of the night like hyperventilating.
okay. I'm glad that I'm not the only one who does that, because I do the exact same thing.
Fuck yeah, no. Okay, so Tompkins takes that down. Tompkins, you're up for, and I don't know why we have this award now. Cringiest moment. What non-horror or non-body thing made you cringe the most?
I already talked about it, the kiss at the end, because there are other things that are, homophobic in this movie, but this is the most, like, openly, like, there's nothing to enjoy there. There's no, it is just literally a metaphor for curing someone's homosexuality through the love of a good woman, and it is also just horrible pacing and everything else. It's cringy in all the ways I don't like things to be cringy.
As you went over, like they were like, oh shit, it's page 87 of the script, we have to wrap this movie up.
Yeah.
And so they did it quickly, not thinking that it was a double betrayal. They were just they were like stabbing many people right in the back. Taylor, what was the cringiest moment?
I would have to say the extended sequence of the coach in the shower getting his ass whipped by the towels. It went on for so long, and it was like so obvious that like the movie felt like it was doing something and being really creative, and like this was like their touchstone kill for the movie, and like none of it worked. And like I just felt ashamed for like everyone making the movie during that scene.
The documentary like softened me, like people talking about like, oh yeah, that was kind of the first time I had seen it. Like to me there are at least incidentally things that are redeemable about that. The kiss at the end was hard to watch.
Yeah,
partially because his face is, this guy's not a looker.
Yeah. But like that's how like that was sort of my acting in high school, so that's how I related to this movie. Tompkins takes it down once again. Taylor, director's signature moment. We've talked nonstop about how Jack Shoulder is one of the most creative geniuses that has ever been born.
Right.
A titan in film history. What do you think is the proof of that?
I think he has a penchant for fucking up kitchen appliances for no reason. I think that's really what he goes for. He
like
wants
Tim
you
the
to
Toolman
know.
Taylor?
Yeah, exactly. Like Tim the Toolman Taylor. I have heard from behind the scenes that he would come on and set every day. He's like, more power. But yeah, he lights the toaster on fire for absolutely no reason that's ever explained. Lightning strikes the dish rack.
Yeah.
And
every time something like this happens, people are like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah. The dad runs over. Like
Weird
Jesse's
kitchen.
like, Dad, I swear to God, Freddy Krueger, he's in the house, and I'm possessed. And then the toaster lights on fire, and the dad's like, oh, let me put that up. All right, Jesse, go to your room. Unpack your room. I do not I do not care about whatever the fuck
wasn't
you're
even
saying.
plugged in.
Wasn't even plugged in. Moving on.
Well, what are you gonna do?
All right, Tompkins. Director's signature.
I guess a signature would have to be whatever in this most feels like a Desperate Housewives behind the scenes moment. which I did not strongly pick up on. So instead, I will take my cue from the documentary and say that it's all of the dialogue that is meant to contain some sort of subtext just being spoken with like no. So like I picked the moment where Jesse's friend is talking about the coach and says he's got a real stick up his ass. He's always got a stick up his ass. And it's like, okay, that is clearly meant to be like an allusion to homosexuality or whatever, but because the director is such a clueless fucking dork, he just has the character be like, yeah, he's like, just say it flat. Let's not put any inflection on this.
I mean, how many times does Freddy say to Jesse, I want to be inside you. I want to be in your body. You know, I want to be one with you.
And
the
just
director's
always
like, got it, ship it.
Yeah. And the director's like, yeah, I don't know how else you could say that.
This one's going to go to Taylor because I do think that the director, I could just feel him getting off on the fact that like everyone's scared of scary things. But what if I made people scared of things that aren't scary at all, and also I made them not scared at all? Would that be a horror movie? And it is not.
For Halloween one year, he like gave his wife a KitchenAid mixer. And was like, "Oh, gotcha."
Careful.
All right, the final one, Taylor, is pound for pound performance. So this is the award that doesn't necessarily go to the lead, but who did the most with their amount of screen time? Who do we got?
I think that the obvious answer is Grady. And there were moments where he had a little dip, but I think nothing else in this entire movie comes close to popping the way that his scene full of food at the cafeteria table does. Like, everything that he says in that scene is golden, and the way that he delivers it, perfect. He's bringing energy that was much needed in the film, and it was that moment I was like, I wish Grady was in more of this.
One of the best lines of dialogue in the movie, where Jesse is clearly tormented and going through something, and then says, Grady, do you remember your dreams? And he says, only the wet ones, bro. Woo! Grady time!
It's such a...
Yes, Grady, yes!
Yes!
Tompkins.
We love Grady.
What do you got?
It's interesting that Taylor thinks that's the obvious choice, because I think the obvious choice is, in fact, Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. First of all, Robert Englund is never going to win one of these for anything else. No other Freddy Krueger will be on this, and he is legitimately good as Freddy Krueger. As we saw in the documentary, he was the only person who has understood what was going on in this and tried to tailor his performance to that. And he's just a creepy good person, and whenever he does happen to be on screen, you're like, yeah, that's Freddy. He's doing it.
That's fair.
I think it's so, like, it's such a... And, like, I'm sure you guys read the story where they were like, fuck him. We don't need him. Anybody can play Freddy. And then, like, 5 days into filming, they were like, get that guy on the phone. We need him back. And that perfect level of... I would say that, like, he's got the most perfect understanding of the tone where he is always, you know, like, taking it as seriously or not seriously as the scene demands.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, Freddy obviously is a big draw. Like, he's still being Freddy, and like Robert Englund is great, but I think this is the worst Freddy. Like, he was given the worst Freddy stuff to do, so I think that drags it down in my estimation. But you're right, he is like the best part of the movie.
I also think that this is like, you know, when Al Pacino gets an Oscar for like Scent of a Woman. It's like, okay, that's not his best, but like we are also, you know, understanding that this is a little bit of a lifetime achievement award.
I was also expecting more, like, puns. Does that happen later? I thought he was, like, a wisecracking pun idiot.
I think this movie didn't have a good writer.
But he also didn't do it in the first one.
No.
So, at some point, he just becomes, like, a wiseacre?
He did it like just like
I think
he
comes into his
own
own,
the first one,
you know, at a certain point. Like, he after wearing the mantle of Freddy Krueger for so long, you know, he gets comfortable.
You got to do
with his own
something.
Skill. He can, you know, he can let fly with the zingers.
So the winner there is
Ryan.
Because it is very clearly Lisa. She is the best actor by far. She's the only one with any talent, and I will cite as evidence she blows past those baby-faced dogs because she's on a mission. But an hour before that in the movie, when they're in that same factory, Jesse opens up a door, and there's a rat, and that's not supernatural. That's just a place where rats live, and she is more horrified than any other part of this movie that there could be a rat in there. So I'm giving it to Meryl, the Meryl Streep of our generation. So your bondage award, people who look closer to James Bond's age than high school age goes to Grady. The body horror was Blade Fingers. The cringiest moment was the kiss at the end for a double betrayal. Director's moment is, what are those, kitchen appliances? Let's do something with that. And your performance of the movie is Lisa. When we come back, guys, that's it. I'm going to total up the points, and I'm going to reveal who won.
You can go. Death knocking at your door. This is a battle. Battle for your nightmares. Scared if you battle. Hide now with recite prayers. Can you hide? No. Can you run? No. Nowhere you can go. Death knocking at your door. In my world, you're a jester. Just a copy. I'm the mentor. Visionary and inventor. With your worst fears coming in hot. Clown head, meet the blade hand. Cut it through
That is our show, Nightmare on Elm Street, Nightmare of the Elm Street. I don't know, man.
Freddy's
85.
Elm Street Revenge 2, doing it Elm Street style, baby.
Did we talk about who exactly the revenge was on?
I guess us.
Kids.
Society.
The real revenge
audience.
was inside us the whole time.
So that was the movie, guys. Taylor, I'm going to start with you because you haven't watched any of these other movies, but just based on this one, do you think that it has the chance to go all the way and take the tournament down?
No, I think it's an important and interesting one to talk about, but I don't think it was particularly good. It was like a fine, exactly like a 2.5 out of 5 movie.
Tompkins, what do you think?
Nope. No way in hell. I think it's interesting, and it's fun to talk about in the context of, like, the horror pantheon. In the same way that, like, I don't understand people who like pro wrestling, but then when I hear people talk about why they like pro wrestling, I get into it. And it has so much to do with, like, the behind the scenes stuff, the drama that's going on, all that. This kind of feels that way, where it's like I was interested in watching it, I was interested in talking about it, but it had so little to do with, like, what was presented to me on screen in isolation without requiring outside context. It will not win the final bracket.
Okay, so we're declaring it now. There's no fucking point for this movie to be in here. But I will say that I think a lot of people, and maybe including me, think that, like, horror movies don't have a lot of range, They're samey. And over the last couple weeks, I've watched Nightmare 1, Nightmare 2, and Friday the 13th 5. And let me tell you, folks, there's a ton of fucking range in horror movies. Like, Nightmare 1 is a all-timer. Like, it's really good. It's really interesting. It's very well done. And Nightmare 2 sucks compared to it, but is Citizen Kane compared to Friday the 13th 5, A New Beginning.
Yeah, so some of them suck. Like, I just recently watched the 2019 Black Christmas remake, and, boy, talk about a real swing and a miss of a movie.
Well,
but, like, the 1974 Black Christmas, all-time, like, I would rate, like, I think it's, like, all-time great movie.
But I think that's the safest money, though, is that modern remakes of horror movies suck because they just don't get it in every way. Like, they're like, I can't come up with my own idea. And then also I saw this movie from the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, and I don't understand why it was popular. Yeah, I'll fucking remake it.
Yeah.
I will, even with, like, Friday the 13th Part 5, it's obviously, like, a horrendous movie, but you get sucked into, like, the lore of because these are all the famous slashers that have, like, 10 movies at least, and they go so off the rails at a certain point, and so it is kind of similar to, like, being, like, a Star Wars fan or something, where you kind of, like, come to a place of acceptance where you're like, there's 2.5 good Star Wars movies. But I'm still going to read all the Wikipedia entries about, like, Luke and Leia's children and, like, what happens. Like, I'll just follow this endlessly because I'm, like, locked in already.
like if you go up to someone and say Jason Goes to Manhattan is the Phantom Menace of the Friday the 13th franchise, a bunch of people will say yes, that's correct.
In fact,
and I
put
love
that
it.
on a T-shirt and make new friends. Like people will see that on your shirt and they will come to you or they will not. I remember the moment where I realized that most Star Wars movies are bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like their batting average is now terrible.
Yeah.
Did you guys? I forgot to ask you. Did you guys watch the 2010 Nightmare?
I think I started it and fell asleep partway through, which I don't think was a reflection on the 2010 Nightmare as much as it was that I was tired, but make of that what you will.
It has a crazy bad reputation. All right, let's get to the main event. This is Who Won? We know that Nightmare 2 lost, and it will not be winning the bracket. But, Taylor, you came in hardcore, had 22 points.
Hell yeah, that's probably a great amount, right?
Actually, no. I'm trying to, be like a consummate host and prop you
So
up.
you're
but
trying to
that's-
let Tompkins down easy.
That's a
about
fucking
the great
terrible
amount of-
score. 22 is jack shit, bro. Did you watch the movie?
Sort of.
Tompkins, you had 30 points. You crushed him.
Good.
But this was the episode where you no longer care about points, and so don't care about this.
No, I also know that it's basically like this has got to last me a while. This
30
feeling
points?
of victory. Yeah.
Yeah, the government's about to start rationing points.
Yeah.
So.
It's not coming back for a good while. I will say the last time I podcasted with Taylor was a movie of the year forever ago, and he burnt me real good right at the end of it because we were talking about Phantom Thread, and I wanted it to win. And I said, I think this is like a very original movie. And you were like, oh, well, I just said that because, he specifically said that he's just remaking or he's just ripping off Hitchcock. And then they're like, all right, that's our time. Bye. And so now, all these years later, I planted the seeds of revenge and I watched them grow.
Freddy's
and now,
revenge.
Taylor,
This is Tompkins' revenge.
you are eating the dirt between my toes. You are scum, low life, bad, and I'm good, and I probably keep winning.
I deserved this. I earned this with my poor behavior. I'm sorry.
Tompkins, next week is Phenomena, or next episode. Do you know what that
Yeah.
movie is?
John Travolta has a brain tumor.
Nope. One fewer letter than that movie. Taylor will not be here, but Tompkins will be, as I will be as well, as we continue our journey to find out what is the greatest horror movie of 85. Taylor, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything you want to plug or social media, or is there do you have a favorite jelly or jam that you want to promote?
I will say, guys, I've moved from my primary jam being like a grape based. We're an all raspberry jam or preserves situation in this household now, and it's fucking great. You got to, if you're just sticking with your safes, like maybe a strawberry every now and then, get some raspberry, get a little blackberry going.
A lot of little seeds though with the raspberry though, right?
Well, it depends on what you get. Now, if you're getting a jam, usually the seeds are out. If you're getting preserves, yeah, you're going to have a lot of little seeds. But I like them for the texture. They add a little extra little tartness.
You got to understand, a jelly is made from the juice of a fruit, whereas a jam is made from the preserves of a fruit. So jam, you're going to have some seeds. You're going to have some. A jelly, though, is going to be clear and smooth.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Also, my rule is don't buy grape jelly. Buy something else. Buy something a little more exotic, because every restaurant you go to for the rest of your life will have. That's where you will get your grape jelly fix. They have nothing but grape jelly. So try something else when you're at the grocery store. Peach. How about peach?
Yeah.
Also,
get into those butters, those fruit butters.
Oh, fruit
an
butters.
apple butter. I love an
Yeah.
apple butter.
I got a peanut butter from the Whole Foods 365 the other day. Just soup inside there. It's a liquid butter. I'm not a fan. I don't like
will
that
say-
soupy butter.
Do you have to shake it up?
Apple butter.
I mixed it up so much. It's still soup.
Apple butter is so good that it can look exactly like baby diarrhea and still be
yeah.
appealing.
All right.
When you
I would eat it out of a diaper.
When you look at apple butter, you don't think that looks like baby diarrhea. When you look at baby diarrhea, you think that looks like apple butter.
My mom's mom made homemade apple butter and homemade baby diarrhea. At the
And let me tell you, they were both
for
quite
Taylor,
excellent.
for Tompkins, I'm Ryan. We will see you next time.